everyone, and welcome to our session, How Agentic AI Elevates Digital Government Services. You may know me by now, but my name is Emily Jarvis, and I'm the Senior Manager for Events here at GovLoop. And today I get to walk you through today's session, so thank you so much for joining me. And a special thank you to our sponsors at Wiz, Ping Identity, Laserfish, and Granicus for helping us put on this session today. So let's get right to it because agentic AI is opening the door to a new era of digital government, one where services don't just respond to constituents' needs, but anticipate them, simplify them, and help people get things done faster. But the question isn't whether the shift is coming, it's how ready is your agency to take advantage of it. So today, our experts will share how agentic AI can strengthen your digital experience. We'll break down what this emerging capability means for government, how it empowers your team, and how to introduce it responsibly and transparently to your organization. But before we get to all of that, we do have some housekeeping items to go over. First things first, we have some great resources available for you on the console under that resources button. This is also where you can find out a little bit more info about our speakers, so make sure you check that out. If you need access to the closed captioning feature, just look for that show captions icon, and that's where you'll find that added accessibility. Now, of course, we hope you don't have any technical difficulties, but if you do, send us a message through that Q&A tab, and one of my GovLoop colleagues will get you all sorted out. And here's the secret sauce, because you can use that same tab to submit questions to our speakers, and we want your questions, so don't you dare be shy. And if you're feeling extra bold, of course, you can chat with your fellow Govies using that chat button along the bottom panel as well. Finally, we are recording this training, so check your inboxes tomorrow because we'll email you a link so you can watch the entire session on demand. All right, with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let me introduce you to our speakers. Joining us today, we have Kimberly Brandt, who's the Deputy Administrator and Chief Operating Officer for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We have Chris Saling, who is the Chief Technology Advisor for Manpower and Reserve Affairs at the U.S. Army. We have Kelvin Brewer, who is the Director for Public Sector Sales Engineering at Ping Identity. Andy McIsaac, who's the Senior Strategic Solutions Manager for Government and Education at Laserfish. Luke Norris, who's the Vice President for Platform Strategy and Digital Transformation at Granicus. And Brian Rosensteel, who's the Head of Public Sector for Product Marketing at Wiz. Thank you all so much for being here. And to better understand each of our speakers' perspectives on agentic AI, I sat down for one-on-one interviews with them. Here are those conversations. Here to talk about all things AI is Chris Saling, who is the Chief Technology Advisor for Manpower and Reserve Affairs at the U.S. Army. Chris, thanks so much for being with us today.
Now, Emily, thank you for having me and about one of my favorite topics too.
Great. All right. So before we go into the deep end here, I think I want to get us all talking the same language. And for that, I'd like you to define how you talk about things like agentic AI and specifically agentic AI within the context of government services, because that may be slightly different than what our friends in the private sector are up to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of the time when people are talking about AI these days, they're like, oh, AI is new on the scene. And I have to remind them that AI is, artificial intelligence is still defined by, tests that they came up with in the 1950s. The concept had been around for a while, but more often than not, we're talking about agentic AI or generative AI. So, artificial intelligence just simulates things that can be done with human intelligence. Generative AI generates new stuff like pictures and words and whatever it is we've asked it to generate. Agentic AI is AI that does stuff for us. It is task AI. So instead of just, kind of going to Chat GPT and saying, hey, pull me all the information on such and such, you can set it and say, I want you to retrieve a report on these 5 topics, and I want you to provide that to me every morning at 6 o'clock. Or I want you to go and find these things and do this particular thing and add it to my calendar. Those are all the different things that, we usually tell it to do. On the government side, we don't always have all of those capabilities yet. We're still trying to figure out how to let agents not run wild on our government systems and our government networks. And I think a huge part of that too that we haven't touched as much as I'd like is less about the actual governance controls that we put on the network and more about the education that we give our folks.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, we are going to get into all of those pieces as we go today. And let's start with some of the barriers. And I think you highlighted some of them. There's obviously an education gap that exists here, there's a governance reality that needs to be put in place, security, all those
Hmm.
good things. So when you look across agencies today, including obviously the US Army, where do you see perhaps? I'm going to call them the biggest barriers, but the things that can get in the way to adopting this agent-driven approach.
So a lot of the obstacles that I talk about, or even just kind of the roles and the uses and the interaction with AI, I use a framework that, let's imagine AI is a car. So it's a thing that's going to get us from point A to point B faster than we would normally. But that kind of shows you where some of the barriers might be. One is people don't necessarily know their roles around AI. I think a lot of people think in order to be able to use it that they have to be, they have to get in depth into the code. They have to be a computer scientist. They have to be all these things. When that's looking at like your concept engineers, those are the folks, who develop the fancy concept cars that you see at shows. But that's your Google DeepMind, that's your OpenAI, that's your folks who are pushing the frontier of what these models can do. What we need are folks who are intelligent drivers. So we need folks to be able to get in and know how to use these tools in a way that's going to get them from point A to point B. So they have to know where point B is. They have to be able to evaluate what gets you there. So there's an education gap there. We don't necessarily know how to operate, how to get the right information to operate the car properly. And a lot of times we lose focus on what point B is, and we just kind of focus on getting the car. So that becomes the end game versus it's supposed to take us to our business objectives. And it's true in the federal side and in industry. The other one is there's things that cars need in order to get from point A to point B. They're really expensive right now, but so is good quality data sometimes. Um, Data has been a pervasive problem in the federal space. We don't really pay enough attention or enough resources to making sure it's good data. We get spoiled a little bit, I think, in that we have a lot of it and we assume that, the quantity, and there's got to be some good stuff in this somewhere, right? And that's not always the case. So we've got a skills gap, we've got a focus gap, and we've got, the data gap. I think those are our biggest obstacles to actually being able to use these tools the way we really need to.
And that's got me thinking. I love your metaphor. And as a car owner myself, I have no idea how it works. There's this comedian that tells the story about if he was a time traveler and he went back 30 or 300 years. And folks were like, all right, what happens in the future? He's like, let me tell you about this thing called the internet. Let me tell you about the thing like we're gonna go to the moon, and they're like, how? And he's like, I don't know. How do you talk on a cell phone? I actually don't know the answer to it. I just know it exists. And so your metaphor resonates with me, but it also has me thinking about this idea of mechanics in
Hmm.
this space, right? Like you need the folks at your agency who maybe aren't building it. They're not the engineers
Yep.
coming up with the
Hmm.
concept, but they're the folks that are there to kind of fix some of the problems or maybe notice
Hmm.
what that tinkering sound actually means. So,
Yep.
how do you actually empower your team to take advantage of these systems, to look at these systems in a different way? What does that empowerment look like?
So a lot of it, it's a combination of education and access. So we have to teach people that, I mean, this is something I've been trying to teach just with software. These are things that need to be maintained. We need new versions. So, we need updates. I mean, in this day and age, you almost need more software updates for your car than you need mechanics. But, we need to look at these models. They're not fire and forget. They need exactly what you were talking about with the mechanics, the fine tuning. So we need people to understand what a good end result looks like and how to critically evaluate it and how to know kind of what it looks like when you hear that, tinkering sound.
Mhm.
And then who to flag it for. Is that something we go in and troubleshoot ourselves? With a lot of these tools right now, the ones that are fed by prompts instead of code, we can go in and tweak those ourselves. So we can go in there, tweak the language a little bit, and kind of see what it takes to put the right guardrails on this thing or to get it back in the tracks. But with that, there's a lot of things you can only really figure out when you're messing with something practically. So we need more sandboxes. We need more environments where we can have people use AI tools and pressure test them a little bit before they start pressure testing them on, important systems, real life data, personnel data, all the things that we normally restrict. So I actually do a lot of coursework in that area where I teach people to use AI tools in very low threat, low risk environments. I mean, it's something as simple as going and taking a picture of your fridge and having ChatGPT do an inventory for you and figure out what you should eat for dinner.
Mm,
There's lots of things that we can do and test in those sandboxes, but I'd like for us to have more formal sandboxes in the federal space where people have, whether it's dummy data or synthetic data, to use with these tools before they go live.
yeah. My dad taught me to drive in my middle school parking lot, and so that's my sandbox. It
Yeah,
was
maybe it's
a
not a
long,
sandbox, it's a parking
yeah,
lot.
it was a long time before we did any road testing.
Hmm.
That's for sure. And he would probably argue that I could probably still use some more road testing, if we're being honest.
Hmm.
Okay, so I understand where we're going here. I understand some of the opportunities and the challenges that exist. What practically could this look like in reality? Where could this reduce maybe friction? It could be small, it could be big, but where do you see some of these agents playing a role in the everyday workflow of an
Hmm.
organization or an agency?
So I love that you asked that question because a lot of the times folks I work with want to go straight to, well, this is AI at the edge. We're solving all these big problems. I go for wherever the biggest stack of paper is, or where they're in the one thing that takes up most of people's times, email and meetings. So something that we can do right now, right away, is use a combination of sorting and prompts to clear all the clutter out of the email. And when I say the clutter, it's like you don't want to necessarily just delete everything, although sometimes we know it's very tempting to control alt delete. Um, but what you can do is figure out what are the things that you need to read immediately? What are the things that you want summarized at the end of the day? What are the things you want summarized at the end of the week? So, depending on how much permissiveness you have in your network, you can either use inbox rules to sort them and then export things into a generative AI tool. We use genai.mil for that and get those summaries on a regular basis. Power Automate is a way to pull that automatically where you don't necessarily have to do it. But then all of a sudden, you're not sitting there trying to go through every email to see if it's something you need to see. You can go through, okay, here's the thing from my boss. He's going to need the answer like right now. I'm going to flag that as important and get back to him. But a lot of these other summary things, I can get to those when I get to them. Another thing I've done is for a few folks is I've gone through and done a calendar triage where I've exported calendars into like genai.mil or another, closed tool. Because if we put anything into open tools, you're basically posting it on the internet. So it's not controlled, it's not safe. It's just here, I'm gonna let that out for everybody. So let's use our approved organizational tools. But on the DOW side, we do have genai.mil for that. So I'll put calendar CSV files into that, and with series of prompts, I'll go through and try to figure out like where am I losing the most time? How much of my time is obligated for meetings versus work? Do I have enough thinking time? And one of the calendars I went through was almost like 70-80% scheduled in meetings. And it's like, okay, no wonder you don't feel like you're getting anything done. You don't have any thinking time. Immediately, we went through and kind of looked and see what types of meetings were taking up the most time. I mean, any meeting where somebody reads a calendar to you should be scrapped. And if they want a creative way to scrap it, download the calendar into Notebook LM and you can listen to it as a podcast when you're working out if you really want that calendar read to you. But a lot of those things, it's like, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's implement some organizational discipline just to make sure that we look at these things and everybody knows where to find them. Otherwise, we had a lot of one-on-one approval meetings. Do you need 30 minutes with everybody who has something that wants approval? Or can you knock it down to a couple of office hours where it's like, okay, you take a whole bunch of 5-minute pitches and then that's that. Triage the things in advance. What things do you need to hear now because it's got a due date? And what things can wait for an office hour? Because I think it's less of a technology problem for us to be able to free things up and more of a business process problem. We kind of need to get out of the idea that everything is urgent and really go back to imposing priorities. AI can help with that. It can help identify where we're misprioritizing things according to what our stated priorities are, where that's out of alignment. And then it's not going to help you make those top tier decisions. That is a uniquely human function, and I think we need to keep it uniquely human. But what it can do is it can clear out all the mechanical clutter, all the admin, the toil that you are spending tons of time on so that you have more time to actually think. And I just want to pull the thread on a little bit on that, just because I've been doing a lot of really, at least I think it's really fascinating research on cognitive capability. You get leaders who make better decisions when they have more decision time and when they're able to batch decisions. Because when they're constantly signal switching, you don't get good decisions. You get fatigue decisions or you get whiplash decisions. And they're not contextualized by the decisions the leader has made on that same topic previously because they forget.
Yeah. So, first of all, that calendar idea, I'm going to do that today because that's brilliant. I just want to see where I'm spending all my time. But it brings up this idea for me of that thought never would have crossed my mind. Just fundamentally not how my brain works. So when I hear things like, let's take the toil out of your day, I'm like, sign me up. I just don't know how. And
Hmm.
so to me, one of the big challenges is feeling like AI could be a really big help for me, but it's such a high learning curve that I'm like, I'd rather just do it myself, the old fashioned way, which is not a productive way to be thinking about it. So, how can you work with employees like me who want to get to that next level with AI, and have it actually impact your day to day, reduce that toil? And so it doesn't feel like, hey, let's just add another tool to your
Hmm.
capabilities without kind of having the context in there.
Well, that kind of makes the case for AI literacy instruction because I think the biggest differential between everybody's talking about, well, AI is going to take jobs, AI is going to take jobs. AI is not going to take jobs, it's going to take tasks, but it's making sure it takes the right tasks and you elevate your time into the tasks where you need to be. That's going to be a differential. That said, that's going to make people sit there and go, oh, then I really need to learn this. But that's the thing. There are lots of free resources out there to learn. And I recommend looking into all the free resources. Google has a bunch, OpenAI has a bunch, Anthropic has a bunch. There are all kinds of free resources out there. And I can push a list of my recommended resources if that would be helpful.
Oh,
You
I'd love
don't
that.
have to pay someone a huge amount of money for a course or for instruction. There are a lot of folks who, go out and do this work and are happy to talk about it. Lunch and learns are a great idea, communities of practice. Go and try some things and have people share what they've learned, what they've tried, what their prompts were. Do they have a prompt formula? I have a one-sheeter prompt formula I share with a lot of folks because if you use a good starting prompt, you have to iterate less and you actually use fewer tokens. But there's all kinds of little tricks to getting started practically that people can try if they look at some of the resources and look at some of the other things people are doing. Um, there's another piece there that's a little more nuanced, and it's that domain expertise matters.
Mm-hmm.
Having expertise and experience is kind of poo-pooed these days because, well, everybody has AI, they can just do that. Well, not just because they can do it doesn't mean they can do it well. Because who's going to be able to outdrive you in a clunky car? A good, practiced, experienced driver is going to be able to operate that clunky car way faster than somebody who has built themselves a race car can operate it. They're still going to be ahead. So that skilled person with the race car is going to be out ahead of everybody. I mean, we have to go in and look and see what are the processes, what are the load-bearing things that we absolutely must do as humans, and what are the ankle biters. The person with the experience in the business process who could differentiate the ankle biters from the things that must be done, that's where you start figuring out what you can automate. And then you just start looking for repetitive mechanical processes that you're like, I don't know why I'm filling out this form again. I don't know why I'm doing this other thing again. So, I mean, my rule of thumb is if I have to do the same thing 3 times, I'm going to automate it. Like I have not sent out, I do a lot of speaking events. We've done a lot together, but this would be a fun one for you too. Have a AI template in your email of your standard bio and headshot. And that
Mhm.
way, the minute somebody asks for you, you can just send it, or you can have AI send it for you.
Love
So do
that.
it 3 times, automate it.
I do a lot of the same things 3 times, so I'm
Well, that's
right
the thing
there.
too. If you don't want to lose the personal touch, because not I mean, everybody recognizes AI slop in writing now.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want AI writing it for you, but AI is great at making templates that you can go customize. So that way you're not sitting there going, what did I put in that last email? Oh, yeah, well, here's the template. I'm going to customize it for this person. I'm going to put my voice on it. Da-da. It still gets you started and saves a little bit of time.
I love that. All right, final question for you. And I think this one is pretty difficult because the pace of change is just so fast right now, right? Like
Yes.
here at GovLoop, we have Copilot embedded into our systems, and 4 weeks ago, the outputs that we were getting from some of the prompts that we were doing, we were like, well, this is trash. And now they're great. So with the pace, the way things are evolving, it is very difficult to predict the future. So I'm not going to ask you to do that. But what I will ask is as we see shifts towards more AI, whether it's agentic, generative, whatever the future one is going to be called,
Hmm.
where do you see that constituent? So flipping to the constituent side of the house, where do you think that they'll see the biggest impact in their digital government experience?
Interesting. I think a lot of it, this is me also being biased from the HR perspective. It's going to be in the service side of things. I mean, one of the biggest returns on things I've built so far have been just question GPTs.
Mm,
Very simple. I mean, they're not actually agents. They're not really doing anything, but they're retrieving information. They learn from FAQs that I upload on them regularly, and they can answer people's questions and help them get to the right person when they actually need to talk to a person. So I think our expectation and customer experience and constituent experience in this case, which I really like, I think we need to coin that one. So constituent experience is going to be very different. You should be able to know where your action is. Did you send in a letter? Do you have a request? Do you need a service? Do you need a packet? Well, I should be able to go and chat 24/7 with an agent, maybe it's even a voice agent, and say, where is my stuff? So you're not sitting there waiting, you're not sitting there worrying. You know exactly where it is, and you know kind of where you need to poke if it sits at that step for a long time. So I think we on the federal side are going to have anybody who's in a service office on the federal side, we're going to have to anticipate that. And we should be anticipating that now because that's how your folks are interacting with other services they're receiving from industry. I mean, we talk about it a lot with our soldiers trying to figure out where their stuff is in permanent change of station moves. If they can track their pizza down to the block it's on, they kind of want to know where their stuff is. And so we have an expectation mismatch. So when it comes to service, we have the opportunity to provide very quick feedback. We have the ability to push a lot of things to tier zero, that front-facing self-service level of service that we didn't otherwise. And we should do that because it's going to provide a lot of efficiency for us. It'll free us up from answering questions and tracking actions and basically asking or acting like help desks when we can be doing other things. But there's also going to be the expectation from our constituents that they have that access.
yeah. All right, Chris, thanks so much. I really appreciate your time today.
No worries. Like I said, I love this topic and I'm always happy to chat about it.
Here to talk about all things AI and agentic AI is Kimberly Brandt, who is the Deputy Administrator and Chief Operating Officer for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Kimberly, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
All right, so before we get in too deep into the AI of everything, one of the terms that's been floating around here quite a bit recently is this idea of agentic AI. Explain to me what agentic AI is and more specifically kind of within the context of government services.
Sure. I mean, the way I like to think about it, and I'll have to admit, I am learning about all of this along with everybody else at the same time. But I like to think about traditional AI for me has always been, I think, more of a reactive type of thing. It helps you answer a question, it helps you, sort of draft a document, that kind of thing. It's more just sort of just a basic function. Whereas agentic AI, at least as we've been using it at CMS, and at least as I think about it, is more goal directed. That means that there's an objective. So it can help us do things like reduce claims backlogs or process a beneficiary application for provider enrollment, or well, not a beneficiary application for provider enrollment, but an application for provider enrollment or a benefits application. It also helps you figure out sort of what are the tasks that need to be done and what steps are needed in those tasks. And then it has been really helpful for us in helping us think about workflows across systems. So it's very good at task execution. And then it's also really good at what I would call tool and system integration, where it helps us like be able to have multiple databases work together, be able to feed in electronic health records, claim systems, eligibility determinations, all of that, and be able to take all of that, integrate them, and help us come up with where there are problems, where we see issues, and how to make it all work more seamlessly together. So for me, the agentic AI is really that sort of how do you take what is just a normal, like, what is this and why do I have this sort of answer, and then actually turn it into a goal-oriented end result that gives you a good workflow and helps you figure out how to make your system better.
Yeah. I always tell the story about my dad and when he was signing up for Medicare, and he was a disaster case, right? Like he just did not have any of his ducks in a row. And one of these very kind CMS employees sat down with him and walked through things for
Yep.
seemingly a very long period of time. And I can just imagine that if he had those services available to him when he was going through the process, that whole process could have been so much more streamlined and been less annoying for everyone involved.
And as much as I'm sure you probably thought it was annoying, our people are used to that and they're great. But
Oh,
that is the
yeah.
goal. I mean, it is to help make it so that it is more
Yeah.
seamless, so that anyone can come and really be able to have it so that you don't have to sit with that customer service representative. You can answer a series of questions, and the agentic AI helps you get to that goal of having that best decision about am I going to join a traditional or a Medicare Advantage plan ultimately.
No, the folks you all hire at CMS are really angels. They're so kind and patient with people. So we very much appreciate it. All right.
Well, thank you, and I will pass that along. I think the same thing. They're the best.
They
So,
are. All right. So as agencies are like yours are looking to maybe invest in some of these areas, grow in some of these areas, where are the hurdles or the pain points popping up?
there's a few. I think, part of it is the interaction between, sort of policy constraints, how much risk tolerance an agency has, and the operational reality of the fact that we are bureaucracies that move at glacial like speed. So all of that, it kind of works against us to a certain extent. But if you look at our programs at CMS, I think, you know, it's for us, it really is risk tolerance that's shaped by a lot of our policy and oversight levers. So for us, we have to really be able to take a look. We always, our default position is always to be conservative. And so what we're trying to figure out is how can we use AI to really help us to be able to, be a little more nimble, to be able to push things a little bit further. Because what we want to do is figure out, how it is that we can can do things that can be explainable and defensible years later. So if we're going to use AI, be it agentic or otherwise, to do a lot of this stuff, we had to show why we thought that was the best course it would. We want to make sure it's working well, because if it doesn't, then we're going to have audits and congressional scrutiny and oversight scrutiny from our friends at the Office of Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office. And then people get very nervous about us automating things without having humans in the loop, if you will. That automation is kind of viewed as a liability because they're thinking that the machines are going to go rogue without us. So that's something I think that's one of the things that has been, it's that risk tolerance. How far are we willing to go to let go of the control, to let things happen? That's been a real bigger thing. The other issue for us is how to use these tools with our data. We have millions of lines of data at CMS. But the problem is it's not always easy to use some of these new tools against the data because there's a lot of fragmentation across our legacy systems in terms of differing types of claims that are coming through, differing types of rules around eligibility for who qualifies to have a claim paid for them, things like that. We also have a lot of inconsistent definitions, which makes it really hard to apply some of this stuff in a global way. And then we also need to adjust to the fact that in many cases we have limited real-time access to the data. Like our Medicaid data is about 4 months old. And that makes it really hard for us to be able to a lot of these tools to the extent that we would like to. So a big barrier to adoption of these on a big scale is we simply don't have consistent enough data, libraries, language consistencies, whatever you want to call it. And we don't have a good way to make sure that we've got that stuff in real time. And those are real challenges for us.
Yeah. I want to move just quickly here into the internal. I think you were highlighting part of this as, you were talking about the data and getting the data lined up in a way that can be as effective as possible. For the employees themselves, how do you see them potentially using AI, agentic AI, generative AI? You can take it in whatever direction you want here, but how do you see AI actually potentially in helping employees do their jobs more efficiently rather than just adding, let's say, another tool you have to manage, right? Like, how can we make this really effective for our folks?
Well, it's interesting because we were actually just talking about that at a senior team meeting earlier today. So it's good timing on that. I think there's a couple of ways. I mean, there's lots of stuff that we do CMS wide, right? But in terms of employees, one of the things that Dr. Oz is really encouraging us to do is to make sure every single employee eventually is going to get at least a couple of hours a month of AI training. So basically, to learn what the AI tools are so that you can use them to improve your efficiency. So one of the ways that my team has been doing it, because I made my team do this as well, we actually used AI to help us all optimize our schedules. And it was shocking to me when we got the right tools and got some training and stuff, how much better my schedule was. My schedule has always been, well, it's still a hot mess, but it's less of a hot mess now. But it really did help all of us to be able to help. It helped us prioritize and think about, do we really need meetings as often as we need them? Do we need them in the cadence that we need them? Do we, it was really fascinating when it did a deep dive of what meetings got canceled and how often, and then what that looked like and all that. It really helped us to be able to, and as a result, I actually have a lunch hour twice a week now. So that's like, I know, a shocking development, but it is something. And then the other thing, and this is an obvious one, but we've really been using it quite a bit to do drafting for us on things like position descriptions. Instead of us having to write the position descriptions, we tell them what the keywords are, the key concepts, and then we give a couple of examples to whatever it is, Claude, Chat GPT, Gemini, you name your, thing. We give them a couple of examples and then have them draft it rather than us having to draft it. We're still having final eyes on it. But the fact is, if we can use it to help us do basic, just, run of the mill types of things, this is not like write a payment rule or anything But this is like, just stuff that can help us. It makes a huge difference. I mean, just on the position descriptions alone, the team estimated that that saved them up to 15 to 20 hours of time over the course of a month. And that's significant. So it's a real, and again, these are basic things. These are not like super complicated AI. This is just basically using it. I mean, we use it routinely to help us with memos that we have to do to go along with payment rules and stuff. Summarize the key concepts, help us to do it. So we had to do very short memos up to the White House and stuff. Help us, think through what this looks like. And I mean, sometimes you have to tweak it and you obviously have to fact check it, but it's a huge time saver.
Yeah. All right, final question for you here. And if someone is listening to this and they're saying, a lot of what Kim has talked about is resonating with me, but I have no idea where I go from here. Where do I get started? What is an actionable step that you would recommend that folks take to begin moving forward with a form of AI?
So I think the biggest step they can take is very similar to what Dr. Oz has forced us to take here. It's making the commitment that you and your team are going to actually learn these tools. For us, our senior leadership team is required to spend an hour a week on this right now. Dr. Oz is, we've got an economist who is on staff who is very savvy on this, and we all have to book time with him once a week to learn how to use these tools. And then we, in turn, encourage our staff to, train the trainer, if you will, as people do this, go on and train. I think the biggest thing is you just have to dip your big toe in and go. It's like, when you go swimming, you're all in, it's just sort of, because I think the tools themselves are ever evolving. I mean, every week I hear about new tools, Grok and this and that, and, things that I don't even know half of what I last week learned how to use Nano Banana, which I didn't even know was a tool. And I was like, is that legit a tool? And it turns out it is. But, the fact of the matter is that the more that you learn about what these tools are and what their capabilities are, the more that they become intrinsic, just part of your workflow. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, of course I would use Nano Banana to do graphics on something because that's where I would go. Now, 2 weeks ago, I had no idea what Nano Banana was. So there, but I think the biggest thing is the biggest step you as a leader can take is don't be afraid of it. Embrace it and and find people to help you learn it so that people don't view it as this scary unknown thing. Is something that is actually a part of your life. I'll close on this example, but as a result of everything we've been learning over the past 2 months, I just planned our family vacation to Scotland and London in August and used three different AI tool to not only create the agenda, but create checklists of everything we needed and then create very detailed itineraries with pictures and everything, all within probably 2 hours. And it was amazing because, I just put in everything we wanted to do, put the ages of the people going, put what we were thinking about, and working with it, it refined it. I probably couldn't have hired a travel agent to do it that fast. Now, they might have done it better. I don't know. But the fact is, it was really, when I sent it around to our family, everybody was like, who'd you hire to do this? And I was like, I did it myself, like on a plane. But that's a great example. Once you get to know it, it becomes less scary. And it's sort of like, well, I should just use this to help with my day-to-day kind of stuff.
Hmm. I love that. It also cracks me up because I think it sounds like toddlers are naming these new
Oh, I
AI
know.
devices.
Croc,
Like,
Nano Banana, Gemini is maybe not that, but yeah, you're right. Some of these are very toddler or certainly elementary school-esque, if you
yeah,
will. So,
they're cracking me up, but they are wonderful resources, and we appreciate it. And I appreciate your time today, Kim. Really do.
no problem. Well, thanks so much for having me, Emily, and hopefully this was helpful.
Across the public sector, government leaders expect artificial intelligence-based agents to drive new levels of automation. They envision a hybrid workforce in which AI agents collaborate with humans to improve efficiency and drive better outcomes. But for security experts, agentic AI raises numerous questions. How can they apply authentication and authorization processes to agents and enforce core cyber policies such as least privileged access? To get to the bottom of these questions, my colleague John Monroe sat down with Ping Identity's Kelvin Brewer. Here's that conversation.
So lay the groundwork for me. We know that agencies are ramping up the deployment of agentic AI. I mean, this is seen as a big deal. But
Yeah.
why is identity management so important to these efforts?
First I want to identify that, public sector, it is unique because it's managed a lot by legislative policy. And it's something where it's going to move a little slower than maybe a commercial company that just has to get approval from the board, right? Or, set policy as an IT department, whatever it may be, before they can actually implement things like agentic AI as a tool that can be used everywhere. So we're still in this evolving process in the US federal government as well as at the state and their legislative efforts to figure out how agentic AI is actually going to be implemented in a way that meets public policy and that is an acceptable use for agentic AI. But in that process, we're trying to influence that in the best way we can to look at things like how do we set that foundation where there's requirements in there for authentication and authorization of the agents so that it's treated in a lot of ways the same as a real person is because it's doing the actions that a real person would be doing. Sometimes the person has delegated them to do that. And in other cases, it's doing things as a rogue and needs to be identified as something that's bad. So having that there is in a lot of ways a lot like the way we would treat a normal user, but there are different protocols and things that have to be considered in there. And there are differences in how we're going to have to interact between users, non-person entities, and AI agents that are all going to have to be different categories.
All right, so let's dig a little deeper there. What specific risks do AI agents introduce that, traditional identity solutions just can't handle?
That's a great question. The thing that's really interesting is when you look at an AI agent, what are some of the differences between what a normal user can do is kind of tricky, but some of the things that they can do is similar to what users can do, but in an automated fashion. So that's what increases the risk. So, for example, credential sharing. Agents can be enabled to use a human's credentials. Now, is that much different than somebody who's used social engineering to get a user's credentials to get in? No, but the agent, in a lot of ways, skips the social engineering part of things and are enabled to use credentials because the user willingly gives those credentials, and it breaks the chain of trust within an organization because that user has said, okay, agent, you can now go and do something for me using my credentials. And so it's really a trust that the individual user had for that agent versus, something that was socially engineered to be done in a bad way, in a nefarious action. But you've also got overprivileged agents, which is where an agent is its intention was to be enabled to do a specific action, but now because you have a static context and sensitive role for that agent, it's actually over provisioned to do things and can do more than it's supposed to. You also have shadow agents, unauthorized agents that act without detection. They're almost like a human bad actor, a hacker that's gotten into the environment because they're an unauthorized agent doing something in your environment. And then you also have the fact that there's a lack of oversight because the automation of an agent a lot of times will bypass compliance workflows, approval processes that are in place to protect you from a bad actor or a user doing something they shouldn't, but an agent can bypass those. And then the last one I'll bring up is, adversarial or jailbroken AI. They can then be manipulated to perform unsafe or unauthorized actions. And it's almost, and I've said this multiple times, but it's almost like the same sort of risks of a bad actor or hacker that gets into your environment.
All right, now, but I know identity and access management, that's been around in government for a number of years. I mean, that's really become a big part of the ecosystem. But what makes it so challenging to extend identity to AI agents? Why is this so complex?
Well, one thing is agents are coded to act. People are not going to act immediately if they get access in most cases. They're going to be more methodical about how they do things. Agents are coded to act. So as soon as they get access, they're going to do something. And so you don't have the same luxury of time of realizing, hey, someone's got into our environment that's not supposed to be there. Let's get them out before they do anything. The agent's already doing. So they will act if they're enabled or have permission to do so. And they need to have constraints that is best enforced through an identity solution that is immediate, unlike what your traditional human users had. And so that's where an AIM system being there to enact immediately some differing rules in regards to agents is important to protect the environment.
Thanks so much, Kelvin and John. Security obviously must be central to an agency's investment and future with agentic AI, and I really appreciate you all laying out that concept so clearly for me. As funding becomes less certain and resident expectations grow, agencies of all sizes are looking to technology to deliver more efficient services, streamline workflows, and reduce administrative burdens. Many agencies are investing in a new generation of AI-driven efficiency, whereas legacy chatbots could answer only straightforward rules-based questions. Today, they can be more empathetic than human staff. And when AI agents work in harmony, that's what's known as agentic AI, employees can work simultaneously across multiple systems. That can save money, time, and other resources. To get to the bottom of this opportunity, Luke Norris sat down with my colleague Candace Thorson. Here's that conversation.
Even some of the organizations that try to jump and take advantage on the latest technology, they often struggle to identify and implement agentic solutions. So why is that?
Ooh, yeah, I think it's an important question. I think probably there's a couple of things that underpin that, right? Data is king. We talk about this a lot. We've talked a lot about this with AWS and in a lot of other forums. At the end of the day, data is kind of the center of the universe. And if you don't have good data practices, data standards, data governance, and you have a lot of messy data, it really doesn't matter what technology you put on top of it. It's not probably going to work. So I think that's one place where you see a lot of folks that, rush to use the technology, sometimes overlook that you're putting it on top of a broken foundation of data. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, again, as we kind of mentioned earlier, like the rapid pace and change of the technologies is so significant, right? And so you may start planning something. And if some of these organizations don't have these highly agile product management kind of driven cycles, it could be hard for them to make architectural decisions and technological decisions about what to build. And then I think the third piece is when you think about agentic technologies, ideally what they're really doing is they are augmenting a workflow. They are augmenting or orchestrating processes across a variety of different workflows or a variety of different work streams. And at the end of the day, that also has human impacts, right? It's changing how people do their jobs. And that's one of the reasons that we spend so much time with customers trying to shift the narrative of talking about AI as artificial intelligence, this thing that kind of sounds scary, to actually talking about augmented intelligence and using it as a catalyst to drive change management and to get people to rethink how AI can improve their actual work. So I think some of the times you see some of these like high-tech investments not really fail is they probably didn't equally focus on people, process, and technology investments. And they've often maybe done that on top of some bad data.
We talk about a lot of the problems, right? But at a high level solution, tell me about some of the solutions. What does a modern approach look like? What capabilities does that offer people?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the key capabilities here is, being able to save people time, right? Now, in some cases, it may not be saving 15 FTEs equivalent time, but for so many of these staff workers, right, who, are doing 2 or 3 different jobs throughout the day, sometimes returning 30, 60, 90, even 3 hours of time back to their day by taking some of these manual tasks off their plate, that's a huge, huge win. And so, what that looks like are agents that deploy at different parts of a workflow to go do some of those highly manual, redundant tasks that typically a person would have to do. So, that could be checking for errors or looking for anomalies and trying to identify where there's errors, and then asking an opportunity for a human to review that. Right. It also could be summarizing information or streamlining content for things like agendas and minutes that have to be produced every single week. It could be agents that are actually helping validate that the information somebody put in actually qualifies them and they're eligible for an application, or actually identifying if they're not eligible because they didn't fill out a form right, and taking some of those tasks off of people's plates. So, I think the opportunity is, as you think about these workflows that take sometimes 10, 20, 30 steps, or can take 2, 3, 5 days to go through different departments, agents that can connect to key parts of that to take some of the manual redundant tasks off of the table or off of the plate of those staff workers is really what I think here becomes far more of a modern approach. Now, fast forward several years, I think you'll see a lot of those workflows become even more autonomous. But we know that these are services that impact people's lives. These are services that impact people's jobs and their communities. And that's why I think it's so critical that at every step of those, that there are opportunities for humans to engage, to validate, monitor, and ultimately approve things when appropriate.
Thanks so much, Candace and Luke, for walking us through how agencies can take advantage of agentic AI. Government agencies have made significant progress in recent years in digitizing their paper records and moving them to the cloud. But such efforts often don't deliver the outcome that agencies expect. The problem in many cases is that the content, while digitized, remains disconnected. The documents are not consistently structured, tagged, or organized, and this makes it difficult to adopt automated tools for searching and managing and protecting the content, forcing them to rely on slow, error-prone manual processes. Agentic AI can help, and to get to the bottom of how, John Monroe sat down with Laser Fiches and Isaac. Here's that conversation.
What's your vision for that? What can this really do for folks?
I think AI, agentic AI, represents a shift from systems that simply analyze information to systems that can take action within defined guide rails. Again, the human setting up those guide rails and the judgment. But in content management, that means moving to, beyond extraction and summarization, which are use cases that we currently see now, towards intelligent orchestration of work, right? When this happens, then this should happen, or when this piece of information comes in and it fits this criteria, it should be moved on to this review process, right? So you're setting up an agent to take that proactive action when something happens in the future. But agentic AI in government should not mean unsupervised, right? It doesn't, right? It's a policy bound initiative. You have to have the governance, you have to have the policy, and the system needs to operate with clearly defined rules, thresholds, governance controls, things like that. So you need to make sure that you have a strong governance policy around your information. You have a strong policy for and defined rules of how AI or agentic AI is going to be used, right? So a practical, Freedom of Information Act, right? Instead of staff manually coordinating the searches across the system for all the information that might be needed to fulfill that request, you could set up an agent to monitor the incoming Freedom of Information Acts and then go out and proactively search for that data and say, hey, we found this information. Here's where it is. Flag the potentially sensitive information or exempt material that should not go out, and then route the packages to human legal review, right? But it does all that work of consolidating and pulling that information the AI is not making that final disclosure decision, right? But it's orchestrating the work to pull that information together. So it's doing that end-to-end search, it's reducing delays, and it's helping increase the consistency across how you apply that, right? Other thing could be policy and compliance monitor, right? So in a regulatory or grant making agencies, agentic AI could continuously monitor incoming reports and contracts or case files, detect missing documentation. Hey, we want to go out. We gotta make this report for this grant that we received 6 months ago. Is all the information there, right? It identifies, if there's an expired certificate that's coming up, or trigger notifications or escalate workflow. Hey, we didn't send in the right permit, or somebody's permit is missing, or it's been delayed. It can look at that workflow and say, okay, where is it in the process? Let's get on it. Let's fix it. And then recommend the corrective actions based on policy. So there's a lot of things that agentic AI can do. And really, what we're really seeing is that it can really help you behind the scenes in operating your records management, where it's looking at evaluating the content against retention schedules. I mean, it's not that government doesn't have enough information. Sometimes it might have too much, or it's exposing itself to additional risk by keeping information that from a statutory basis it doesn't need to have anymore, right? It could also look at data that's flagged incorrectly, information that yeah, it went in as this, but maybe it's really this. So let's help improve the process of finding that data, and it can do things like that. So I think agentic AI has a real big play in document management.
Thanks so much, Andy and John. You really laid out the use cases for better data and document management in the agentic AI process. So I really appreciate that. As agencies shift to a cloud native approach to field new solutions, they're creating a problem for themselves. Cloud native technology makes it much faster to develop and deploy new resources and to tweak those systems as requirements evolve. There's a catch though, and that's that agency systems and processes for checking security and compliance can't keep up. So IT leaders can feel that they must choose between applying the brakes to innovation, things like agentic AI, or forcing their cyber teams to play perpetual catch up. To get to the crux of this issue, I sat down with Wiz's Brian Rosensteel. Here's that conversation. So let's talk about the security side of things, because we know that a top priority for government agencies is always going to be security. So and you mentioned FedRAMP a little bit ago, what is happening with cloud security and how are agencies kind of tackling that opportunity and challenge?
Yeah, I know, and it's a really good question. And I always frame it too, because security is typically among the very first in that mindset from the government for a good reason. When they get security wrong, there are very real and very kind of consequential like national security events that could occur. And so that's part of the hesitancy about moving over to the cloud environment. Is it going to be secure? We've since moved past that. We've been able to understand how to approach cloud infrastructure in the right way, but we've always done that through the lens of the traditional, we own the infrastructure, we own the data center, we own the physical server that might be underneath someone's desk sometimes, type of brick and mortar mindset, if you will, right? That that worked when everything wasn't in these cloud environments because we had stovepipes built into the process for logical injections of security. I need a server created that I'm going to manage. That's going to go through a team. They're going to have a physical, server infrastructure that I'm going to get assigned. I can inject in security in that kind of choke point because there are very few individuals who are going to be able to give that capability to me. Now, when we're utilizing and maximizing the kind of capabilities of the cloud, I need new resources. I can deploy those almost by myself in some cases. Now, we've tried to put gates around that, but in general, if we're still relying upon endpoint specific detection for our security or agent-based deployments, that's not to say that endpoint security isn't important. It is. But if that's the way that we are being able to track the inventory and be able to inject in the procedural compliance that is necessary for security, we are always going to run into gaps. And that is what we've seen with the adoption of cloud. A lot of, you'll hear terms like shadow IT or shadow AI. And these aren't nefarious, person in the hoodie in the basement, trying to hack into a system. This is a breakdown in the existing procedures because the speed of cloud. A way that I liken this, just to go on a little bit of a tangent, is to understand how the government operates. There are times when the mission need is so great, they basically say, do what needs to be done to be able to complete it. We'll figure out the rest later. There's a great example of a particular entity, and I won't name them directly. There was a response that they did to an earthquake. They went down into this other country where that tragedy had occurred, and there was a large plane sitting on the runway. And they said that plane needs to move because we have resources coming in now. So they took a bulldozer and they just pushed it off. It turns out it was, a relatively important individual's plane, but that's the kind of mindset. When I have a mission where I have to get it accomplished because this isn't, their potential lives or other things coming in, I'm just going to do it. When we have security built around a requirement for installing specific types of software on that particular server, these agents, that can get skipped or missed with the intent of going back later. But then the next mission arises. And we end up with this kind of problematic tech debt that we fall into. So we have to go at it a different way.
Thanks so much, Brian, for sharing your wisdom with us. Transformation without security isn't possible, so I appreciate you putting that into perspective. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I want to thank our wonderful speakers for sharing their insights with us today. Just a quick reminder that we have some great resources available for you to download, so be sure to check those out before you log off. And like I said earlier, we will be sending you a link to the on-demand version of this training, so look for that in your inboxes. On behalf of GovLoop, Wiz, Ping Identity, Laserfish, and Granicus, I hope you enjoyed today's session. And as always, we really appreciate and value the work that you do. So thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us this afternoon. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in our next training.